Hello, welcome to the Lisa Horton Crafts YouTube channel. My name's Claire Newcomb. I'm Lisa's design team member. I just want to make a little video for you today to talk you through the Poinsettia Builder collection. It's a set of craft dies we have here. It's 12 dies, and I just want to show you through how these dies layer together. It can be a little bit confusing on first glance, but if I can give you a few tips and tricks and show you what to look out for in your die cuts, then you'll be able to go ahead and enjoy creating lots of different poinsettias to put onto your festive cards. So as I say, this is the Poinsettia Builder. I've put the details along the bottom there, along with the reference numbers where you can find them on Lisa's website, which is thatcraftplace.co.uk. I've also put another couple of sets on the bottom there. I'll come to those a little bit later on when I make a full card for you. So I just want to talk you through really this die set. As I say, it's a set of 12 dies you can see here. Now, I have my dies here. I've laid mine out on a magnetic sheet. They don't come on a magnetic sheet. I just find these quite useful for me to store them. Now, what I've done, I've organised the dies here so I can actually break it down for you just to sort of clarify and make it a bit clearer as to how these flowers go together, because you can see from the packaging there's various different formats, different ways you can put these together. And if you turn the packaging around, it will also itemize for you the actual dies that you have, the 12 dies. So if you want to keep track of the dies and when you pack them all away, make sure you have everything, then you'll be able to refer to this, the back of the packaging here. So as I say, I've put mine onto a magnetic sheet, which just makes it easier for me to keep track of. And I've organised the dies into basically two sets. So if you imagine a line down the centre here, we have the dies on the left-hand side, which make the larger of the flowers. And we have the same, exactly the same dies on the other side, but just a little bit smaller. They are exactly the same shape. So if you were to layer these shapes together, they would sit on top of each other perfectly. So if I'll just show you this. If you can lay them up on top of each other like so. Let's just show you against the packaging there that they are exactly the same shape. They are sized up perfectly. Now I've got my dies facing downwards as you would use them through your die cutting machine and onto a piece of cardstock. Now, as with all of Lisa's dies, the detailing on these, we do have the stitch detail on all of the dies except the small berries, and obviously they're just a little bit too little to have that detailing. So Lisa's known for a stitch detail where she can on her dies, and say this is no exception. Now, excuse me, ahead of time, I've already constructed a couple of the flowers. So these flowers are made using these large sets, and you can see that I've already broken down and got the die cuts for the smaller set. I'm going to replicate these flowers that I have in my hands here. Again, these are made from these larger sets. I'm going to replicate them and show you how to build this poinsettia using the smaller versions of the dies. So you can see that we have one of the flowers which has leaves on there, and this is purely your preference. As I say, I'll show you how this is built up. All you do on this, for this flower to create the leaves, is to replace one of the red layers, which would otherwise be the poinsettia petals, as it were. You replace it with a green layer, and that's what gives you the leaves. Alternatively, we have exactly the same flower, but this time the green layer I've actually replaced with red, so you have a full flower there. This does actually look bigger because the whole thing is made in red, but is exactly the same size if I layer those over there. So you can go for 2 different looks. And then once you've actually got familiar and happy with how this flower, whether it be in this form or this form, when you're happy with how this is constructed, you can then start playing around and adding extra layers. So for example, I have die cut an extra larger petal from this die here, and I've die cut it from green. So this larger flower, I could layer this onto an extra layer of this size here, so you can see, oh, excuse me. So you can see, having cut an extra larger layer from green this time, we can actually still create leaves, and therefore that would be a third way you can create this flower. If I just rearrange this around, you can actually see that this flower is exactly the same size as this green layer. So if I layer that up, you can see how perfect it is. So once you got familiar with the construction of the flower, then you can start adding layers, and just by twisting, you do have the chance to add petals to that flower also. And again, I bring in this other flower here. Again, this one, the back layer is just replaced with green cardstock. But if you wanted to add extra foliage to this one, so the illusion is that you have a smaller flower but with the green leaves. If you wanted to add extra foliage, again, you can layer this onto an extra die cut piece of green, again, which is the largest layer here. So if I just layer that on top, you can see that it's exactly the same size. But if we were to twist that and show more of that foliage, you can see that we have more leaves onto the flower, and then we still have our beautiful poinsettia flower in the middle. So as I say, once you're familiar with the construction of this flower, then you can start playing around with the layers and making the flowers as full as you want to, and the foliage as full as you want to. So these flowers here, each flower can be constructed using 1, 2, 3, 4 dies from either set. So I say these flowers are made from the larger set. We have exactly the same dies in the corresponding manner, but in the smaller version. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and you can see here I've lined these die cuts up alongside the dies that we've been cut there. So hopefully, as I layer these flowers with the 2 different layers of red, just to show you the layers, you don't have to use the different colours. I just wanted an easier way to show you the layers. And I'll also show you on this flower here that we do have the centre. We have the centre with the berries. So those have been laid here, and we have these smaller little leaves in the centre also. So these obviously are die cut with this smallest die here. Again, I've turned this down just to keep it all in line with everything else, but if I turn that die over, you can still see that there's even the stitched detail in there. Then we have our berries and the little layer that we add them onto. So we have a set here which corresponds to the larger flowers, and we have the smaller set here which is just scaled down to fit perfectly on the smaller flowers. So hopefully that's the dies explained to, and I think once you've got a grip on that, the whole sort of set does become a lot more explainable, especially when you start die cutting this out as well. So as you can see that I've cut out the different layers in the corresponding colours and put them alongside the die cuts that I've used. Now, the key to layering these flowers, say they are definitely layering dies, and you'll see as I go along that there is each layer corresponds to the layer below. It's not just randomly put together. So the key to actually layering these and getting all the petals to work together is the centre part, I think, where the berries are laid onto. Now I've laid these die cuts down in the correct way, where they literally, I can just pick this one up and lay onto here, then pick this up and lay this onto here. So it's quite useful, as this video will sit on YouTube, that these are laid out for you. So when you're first starting out with this die, you are able to sort of screen grab or stop the video and lay out your die cuts in this particular way. Pay attention to the way that these ones are particularly sat on the desk. It makes a huge difference. As I say, once I've explained to you how each die corresponds to each other, you'll see what you need to look for. But in the first instance, if you're a little bit confused, I would suggest laying out your dies in this particular way. So I'm going to take the center die here, which is the smallest, and I want to show you how this sits on the first layer here. Now, as I say, what I'm going to do, I'm going to alternate the different reds, so hopefully that should make it a little bit easier for you to see. So I'm going to pick up the smallest die and this first set of 3. Now what I want to do, I want to show you how this sits on, how these sit together, and say this is the key as to how you actually layer your die cuts. So if I can bring that in a little bit closer, and you can see this here against the white, by having this set of 3 leaves in this configuration, you'll see this little it looks like a little deformed part I can't think of another word of this leaf here. This is key, because what this part does, it corresponds to this section of the smallest die. So if you have, make sure that this die is sitting in this particular way, with this smallest flower in, or smallest leaf in the center pointing to the left, you can sit this die on top, and you can see that that now marries up perfectly in the center there. Okay, and you can see these little spurs on the larger die here. They look like little spurs. They relate to this section here, and this little spur coming out on this side, on the underside here, corresponds to the tip of this leaf here. So if I can sit that on there again, you can see just how well that matches and that sits together. So I'm just going to glue that in place for you now to keep that in position. And as I say, I'm using the smaller set and making the smaller flower. The larger flower works in exactly the same way, and if you were to die cut all the elements out as I have done here, make sure that even if you're creating the larger flower, that you lay them out in this particular way, and it will actually make a lot of more sense to you. So I'm just going to get rid of that little bit of glue there. Okay, so we have that those first 2 layers together. Now I'm going to pick up the next layer, so I'm going to go for the slightly lighter red. It looks more orangey on the camera for you there. So this one here, I've already put it in the right orientation, so don't move it or turn it around. If I can bring this here. Now the key to this particular die cut, which is this central die cut here, is this little section. This little straight section here corresponds to this little burr on these flowers here. So you can line that up like so. And what you'll see happen, this leaf or this leaf line up with these 2 leaves underneath that die cut, like so. Can you see? So we have this leaf and this leaf sit on top of each other perfectly, and this leaf and this leaf sit on top of each other perfectly. So we can line those up. So those layer perfectly, and then we have this star effect with the rest of the flowers. So we don't need at this stage to rotate or twist anything. So you can see now how those have layered, and we're already forming that poinsettia shape. So I'm just going to move that again. I'm going to put that down so I can glue these together. So I need to put a little bit of glue in the center there. Now remember, these two leaves correspond to each other, and this is why for me particularly when I'm putting these dies together, and I'm hoping that it will help you in the first time that you try this, that you actually line up your dies in a way that they're, you know, it makes sense. So at this stage we have our flower like this one here. So what we can do at this stage, we have the two petals, so we can go one of two ways now. We can go to the largest of the dies now, so any one of these here. If we wanted to put petals straight onto the leaves or the foliage straight onto this now, I will pick up the green die cut. Now I've already sat this in the particular way, so now if I sit my flower on top of that, you can see which of the petals correspond to each other. So we have these three red petals correspond to these three areas on the foliage. So they layer together perfectly and they match really well. And in doing that, you are then matching this large petal here with this section of the die cut, and this large petal sits on this section of the die cut. So you can see exactly how that petal forms. And again, we are not having to twist any of the die cuts, and you still have that formation of the petals and the star flower forming. So that way we can actually go ahead and create one of our flowers with our foliage. So I'm going to glue this so we have this particular version of our flower formed. So I will use the rest of the die cuts and we can create our fully red flower that we have there. So at this stage, we don't need to do any twisting of the die cuts. So make sure all of those layers are flush together like so. And we have our smallest of our flowers die cut. Now at this stage, if you notice that I've only actually been putting glue in the center of the petals. So it does mean that there is some movement in these petals. So now, holding the center, we can actually shape some of these layers if you so want to. You don't have to. You don't have to, because if I just turn this, we do actually have 3 layers to this flower here. So you can create some detailing and some movement in that flower. Now I've used glue to layer these die cuts together. You could use 3D foam and create a very dimensional flower. So there we are, we have one of the flowers there with our foliage in the back. And as I say, I'm just going to bring in another die cut. This is exactly the same size as the green foliage that I've put there on the back. So I just need to get that lined up. You can see that that's exactly the same size. So if we wanted to have more foliage, all we need to do is just twist that bottom die cut and we have the illusion of a lot more leaves, a lot more green foliage sitting under that flower. Okay. I'll come on to the centre with the berries in a second because I think they are probably more self-explanatory than the rest of the flower. So I'll leave that one sitting there. So I'm going to run through that again and I'm going to make, so we have, actually, let me put these. So we have the comparison, the larger flower and the smaller flower there, you can see. So now I'm going to make the equivalent of this flower here, the red one. So again, I'm going to take the set of 3 petals and also this small die cut here. Now remember that this is the way round that we want this. We want the 3 petals on the left with one in the center facing to the left, and this one here. So it's a little bit like 2 legs there. Oh, sorry, let me show you again. So it's a little bit like a figure, a little bit like a man. So we have the head, we have him pointing off to the left, and the 2 feet at the bottom. And obviously I'll show you again just to make sure it's clear that we have these 2 little spurs on this set of 3 leaves. So those little spurs here, one there corresponds to the top of this leaf, and this tiny little one here corresponds to the tip of this one. So I'm just going to pop a little bit of glue in the center and just layer those down. So we are going to take then our middle sized die, so our petal here. I've already got that in the right situation. So we have, if you were to split this die cut in half, you'd have the 3 petals on this side and the 3 on this side. The petals that are closer together, so therefore a smaller side, you want them on the left, and the petals that are more spread out and therefore wider and larger, you want them on the right. And the key to this middle sized die is this little straight section here. This little straight section relates to this flower sitting, or this part of the leaf sitting here. So I'm going to put my glue on. As I say, you could use 3D foam at this stage as well. So to line up these 2 together, we can see that these 2 leaves correspond and these 2 leaves correspond and layer directly on top of each other. And by using the 2 different colours, you can see how those 2 layers actually correspond. You don't have to use the 2 different layers. And actually, you know what, it'd actually be nice if you could perhaps use white or white textured cardstock. That would look really lovely. Or if you were to use a white cardstock, you could start colour tinting it with your inks and everything as well, particularly the interference inks. That would look really nice. Just add that little bit of mica to it. So there we are. We have the stage that we were at with this flower. But instead of going with foliage this time, we'll make this flower larger and add more red petals. So I'm going to pick up the lighter of the reds here. So this is the largest of these die cuts on the smaller flower. Now you want to have this laid out. We have on the widest part, which is this tip here and this tip here, you want that sort of sitting towards the left, as it were, because what then that will enable you to do is to line up the flowers like so, because then we have these 3 points match with these 3 points on the die, and these 2 larger tips here correspond to these 2 tips here. Now hopefully I'm going slow enough, so if you did want to just pause the video and just make sure you're in the right orientation, then that should help. So if I leave those sitting there, that's in exactly the right position that you want both of the dies to be sitting with each other. So if I move that straight across and sit that on top, we have our layered flower. So I'm just going to remove that and add my glue briefly. Again, you can use your 3D foam or silicone glue and make that 3D as well. So these are layering dies, and there are positions on this flower where we have 3 layers of cardstock. So if you were to use 3D foam or a silicone glue, then those layers would be really, really clear to you straight away. And there's no need to be twisting or rotating each of the levels to get the effect of the flowers there. Now, once you get to the stage where you're familiar with using this die cut, then obviously you can twist that and you can make the flowers to suit your eye and your projects. That is absolutely perfect, and say would be highly encouraged. You can make your flowers individual that way, but if you're just starting off with this and you're a little bit unsure as to how you get going, say that is probably the best way to go about layering your flowers. So we have the full flower there with our smaller dies, and I'll just bring in the larger flower so you can see the difference in size. So that's without any foliage. Again, what I've done, I have die cut the largest layer out of green. So if you wanted to, I'll just layer those in to show it's the same size. You could use this and just twist the flower to sit on top of that so you have some foliage showing as well. Alternatively, actually, what you could do, instead of die cutting an extra larger section with the green, you can use what is left, or what you've already die cut, and add more petals. So again, this layer is exactly the same size as the flower, but instead of layering it straight on like that, how about twisting it and actually creating a fuller flower with more of the coloured petals? That would be another lovely way to do that as well. So there, this is where you can actually start playing with your flowers and start playing with your layers. So for the time being, I'll just put that back like so. Now, what I want to show you and just finish off is how we create the centre parts with the berries. So the berries consist of 4 dies. So we have this like the clover leaf shape, and each one of those sections is what these 3 berries sit on. So I'll just show you how I've die cut those just to make it a bit simpler for you. So this is the clover section. This is the smaller flower. This is for the larger flower. So we have like the clover section, and each of these round die cuts will sit on top. Now I'm trying to show you on this. I'll bring in the back of this card. So I've already die cut these. So this is for the smaller flower, so bear with me. It is quite dinky, hence using my precision tweezers. These are from Lisa. So we have our clover leaf shape. Now what I'm going to do off the bat, actually, just make my life a little bit easier. I'm just going to add a little dab of glue so I can put the die cut straight on top. Now I'm using the little die cuts here that have come from the die, but how about swapping things up a little bit and perhaps putting tiny little red gems on there? That would look lovely as well. Add that bit of sparkle for Christmas. So picking up these ever so tiny little berries, I'm just going to layer those in position on top of this clover shape. Now the berries will layer slightly and overlap a little bit, but that adds a nice bit of dimension, I think. So we have those like so. Now at this stage, again, you could add some glitter glue, a little bit of glitter. These could actually, you could replace those little red berries die cuts with little gems. So if I can just show you that, so I won't put it too close to the camera because it will blur, but you can see that tiny little formation. And then this will sit in the center of our flower here. And this central part of the flower, again, there is a corresponding way that this sits onto that die. You can just sit that in the center. Now I think this would look really stunning if you were to create some of these petal layers with white cardstock and then put the red berries in the center. I think that would look absolutely stunning and work so well. So you can see now how all of these dies actually correspond to each other. And I can bring in both of these flowers. Say these are the larger ones on the left hand side, and the smaller ones on the right hand side. So the larger on the left and the smaller ones on the right. And so we do still have die cuts, and if you wanted to pad out these even more, we could add more foliage, and that just changed the shape of the die cut entirely. So it really does depend on the project that you're using. So there are very different ways that you can create these flowers. As I say, you can also pad out the petals and make the actual flower itself even fuller. So there, I'm just twisting that to make the full of that. So basically we have 4 different flowers sitting there for you to use on your projects. So I think the key to using this die set is all in the preparation. Put your dies in a position that makes sense to you. Sort out your die cuts in a way that makes them easy to go ahead and layer, and then your flowers will just form naturally like so. So we can put those to the side. Now I'm going to make a quick little card for you just to finish this off, because they are so pretty. I'm going to create a 5x7 cardstock, and I've used some of Lisa's brand new festive tapestry papers here. Now this is a set of 5x7 paper sheets. They're 200 GSM, so it's slightly smaller than the usual paper packs that Lisa brings to us. So I'll just bring one of those in. I'll just bring in the newest, so it's the Shabby Chic. So these are A5. This is an A5, and then the festive tapestry, if I just sit those on top, these are 5x7, so you can see the difference in size. But these are a really lovely size, ideal for your 5x7 card blanks. These are double-sided, so I've just taken one of the loveliest, it's almost snowflakes on this red, green and sort of cream neutral background here. I've die cut using a Merry Little Christmas die. So this is the die set here. It's a set of 3 dies, and you're able to die cut those. And I've die cut, if I twist that, the central layer there, or the middle layer, just to highlight those words, is Lisa's Glitter Euphoria card in the green. And that matches perfectly with this gorgeous cardstock. And then the greens that I've used and the reds match this perfectly. So I can just layer these poinsettias around the sentiment there. And we have a super simple but effective, quite classic actually, quite classic Christmas card for you. And perhaps we could use a little bit of the foliage just to tuck in behind there. So a really simple card, but the star of these, the card really is the poinsettia flowers. So hopefully that has sort of demystified how they're put together a little bit for you. It's a really lovely flower. It's one that you can use year after year. So thanks for joining me today. I hope you find that useful. Do subscribe to the channel. We'd really love your support. Click the notification buttons also. You'll just be notified then each time Lisa or myself or one of the design team members uploads a new video for you. So we don't want you to miss out on that. Thanks for joining me, and I look forward to you joining me next time.